Hello, Revere, and welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today we have a special guest. He comes to us from Lynn. He's a Vietnam veteran. First of all, let me thank you for your service.
Thank you.
His name is Bruce Dobson. He's here to talk about Agent Orange, which are going to have a town hall meeting on May 17, 2014. So, Bruce, here it is. You expand on it.
Thank you, Morris. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and talk about it. The Vietnam Veterans of America are having a Agent Orange Town Hall meeting May 17th, 2014 at the AMVETS Post 161 at 535 Western Ave in Lynn. And it'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is sponsored by the Vietnam Veterans of America National and Chapter 908 that I'm associated with in Lynn. What I'd like to do this morning with Morris is try to explain a little bit about what Agent Orange is and what it did to the Vietnam veterans and their families. As you're aware, over in Vietnam, on the western part of the country, there was a lot of jungle and a lot of high trees, and what it was doing was it was hiding the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. So the U.S. government come up with this great plan that they would use what they call Agent Orange. And what it is, it's a clear liquid defoliant. And what it does is they used to spray it from C-123 cargo planes. They would use helicopters. And they would spray this defoliant and it would kill all the vegetation. So that way there we would be able to see the enemy. And the problem with that was that we had a lot of Vietnam veterans that were out on 2 or 3 week patrols trying to check the enemy and find out where they were. And what happened is that we were spraying our own people. And what it came down to was after the war, they finally figured out that anybody that had boots on the ground in Vietnam was exposed to Agent Orange. Also, the Blue Navy and the Brown Navy has also been exposed to Agent Orange. So if you were in the Blue Navy and you ended up docking in South Vietnam, you were exposed to Agent Orange. It's a very deadly disease. It's caused a lot of presumptive illnesses with Vietnam veterans. And why I'm here today is, and what this town hall meeting is about, is that what's happening is that our children and our grandchildren are getting ill from Agent Orange. They're getting the same illnesses that the Vietnam veterans are getting. A lot of the diseases that Agent Orange is associated with, ischemic heart disease, a lot of leukemias, prostate cancers.
From Agent Orange?
From Agent Orange. There's a whole list of them. You can find them on the VA webpage.
Can you tell me what the first early stages are of Agent Orange? I mean,
it all depends which disease you get.
Oh.
For instance, I have leukemia. I have chronic lymphocytic leukemia. I found it, I didn't find it, the doctor found it 3 years ago when I went in for a physical. And they did a complete blood count. And the doctor called me up, he said, I want you to come in and get another test. And I went back, I got another test, and it came back the same. What I have, CLL, it's a high white blood cell count. And eventually it'll kill me. Hopefully not, but there's ischemic heart disease.
So actually, excuse me, Bruce, so the white cells, which is part of your immune system, gets weakened because of Agent Orange?
It gets weakened. I have to be careful. I end up I go to the Dana-Farber every 6 months and I get my blood work done.
Great.
And
Cancers.
they make sure it's okay. Ischemic heart disease, you get blockages in your arteries and you end up having to have stents put in. Prostate cancer. A lot of the veterans have you're aware of prostate cancer. You might have to have your prostate out. You might be able to do something to slow it down. There's a whole list of diseases that the Vietnam veterans and their families can get disabilities for.
Families as well?
Families as well. What the Vietnam Veterans of America want to do, and what we're going to try to do with this Agent Orange Town Hall meeting in Lynn, is we really want to get the children of Vietnam veterans and grandchildren, if they have illnesses that are on the presumptive lists for Vietnam veterans, if they have some of these diseases, if your children have them, we want you to file a claim with the VA. And the reason we want to do that is because, similar to what Vietnam veterans went through, when we first started filing claims, the VA wouldn't give us any disability. It took years before they went along with the, they signed a bill, I think it was in 2004, I think George W. Bush signed the bill, Agent Orange bill, where we were able to get presumptive diseases and get disabilities. What we want to do is we want to get the names of the Vietnam veterans' children and grandchildren, if they have similar diseases to the presumptives, to get on the list with the VA. So if the VA changes their mind down the road, they'll already have the paperwork in. So it's very important that if you have families or family members with Vietnam veterans, to come to this Agent Orange Town Hall meeting.
Right. Tell them the date again, Bruce. And
May 17th, May 17th, 2014, at the AmVets Post 161, 535 Western Ave, down in Lynn. It'll be from 10 to 2. And my guest speaker is going to be a gentleman named John Miner. John Miner is the District 1 delegate for the Vietnam Veterans of America. And John Miner is one of the faces of Agent Orange. If you go on the VVA.org and you look up Agent Orange, there's a list of families that have volunteered to describe what's happened to their children and to them. And John's going to come and speak at the town meeting for me.
right before we went on the show, you showed me a list of your brothers who have. Can you just read off their names?
We have Roy Carenti, who passed away 3 or 4 years ago, and we ended up naming the chapter after him.
Oh.
Roy had a neurological disease from Agent Orange. He was sprayed with it up in I-Corps. He was in the U.S. Marines. Stanley Whitehouse was also a member of our chapter, and he had presumptive diseases from Agent Orange, and he passed away. Arthur Sulkins, who was our secretary of Chapter 908 in Lynn, he has lung disease. A friend of mine, Fred, has heart disease. One of our members, Dean, has diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Marty Robichaud has ischemic heart disease.
Yeah, I met him.
You met him at the Wall. He's actually in the Spalding Rehab right now after surgery at MGH. A friend of mine, Bud, up in Billerica, has ischemic heart disease from Agent Orange. A friend of mine, Bob, has ALS. I have 2 people, Bill and Paul, who have prostate cancer. Rich also has ischemic heart disease. And my best friend up in New Hampshire has kidney disease, and he's on a dialysis machine, and I have CLL.
And that's all from Agent Orange.
And this is just my close friends.
Right.
So you multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of Vietnam veterans that are ill with these presumptive diseases, and it starts to add up.
Right. Before we continue,
Yeah.
Bruce, I'd like to present you this flag, which is the things that you and I fought for to keep America free. This was donated by Stop and Shop, Yasik, by the Revere Fire Department, the Revere Police Department, and also on behalf of the Revere Veterans Service under the direction of Commissioner Nick Brewer. I hope I'm folding this right. Here you go. Anyway, it's all yours. Thank you. And thank you again for your service, by the way.
Thank you for yours.
Okay. Well, mine was long forgotten. Yours is still kicking around. By the way, you are a Vietnam veteran, so tell us something about your service, how it was, how many years, what you did in Vietnam. Briefly.
I grew up in Revere. I went to Immaculate, graduated in 1962. And I went to work for the John Hancock for a year, and I wasn't going to go to college. So in 1963, I figured I'd go into the Air Force and get a trade. And I went down to Lackland Air Force Base in 1963, the fall of '63, and I was down in Texas when Kennedy got assassinated. And on that base, they had B-52s, and when he was assassinated, all the B-52s took off because they didn't know if he was killed by Russia or whoever.
You must have been awfully young, about 18, 17, 18?
I was 18, I think, at that
Right.
time. And then I went to tech school, and I got into telecommunications with the Air Force, and I got stationed out at Westover Air Force Base for a couple of years. And in 1965, I didn't know what I was doing, and I volunteered to go to Vietnam. And anyways, I did. And I went over there in January of 1966, and I stayed until January of '67. I was stationed at Phan Rang Air Base, which is on the Central Coast. I did telecommunications, telephone maintenance, ran cable out on the flight line. Now, where I got exposed to Agent Orange, I have no idea. You know, they were probably, what they used to do around the air bases is they used to use backpacks on some of the Air Force guys, and they would spray the Agent Orange around the perimeter of the base.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did they grow the food there to feed you? I mean, did they actually plant food in Vietnam? No, I'm talking.
No, I understand what you're saying. They didn't for us, but you have to remember that the South Vietnamese people were in that area.
Right.
And we're out there spraying this Agent Orange all over the place. If you look up the history of South Vietnam, they have hundreds of thousands of people that are deformed and everything from Agent Orange. It's not just us. It didn't just land on us. It landed on them too.
And then also on their soil. And if they
And their
planted the
soil.
crops, it went right into their system.
It went into the system, and with that spraying, it went into the water. And our GIs are out there drinking the water out of the streams. You'd put pills in the water, but they were still drinking stuff that was probably exposed to Agent
Right.
Orange. So it's really, you know, being 18, 19, I was actually 21 when I was over there. Being 21 years old, you never think of anything like that.
No.
You don't think that the government's going to do something to you that's going to hurt you. And when most of us got home, our basic thing was we just wanted to go to work and get this over with, you know, get it out of our system, you know, after coming back from Vietnam. And we ended up going to work, and we never thought much about it until now.
I heard not only that, but you say you was in the Air Force?
Air Force.
People that were working with radar, a lot of them, I understand, also got contaminated with cancer and from the radiation coming in.
Radiation, yeah. It's a shame. What I saw in the on the internet the last few days when I did some research, there was a lot of contractors over there working when we were there. There was a lot of the people that did the USO shows.
Right.
They're not getting compensated for
No,
being
because they
ill.
were civilians.
They were civilians. They're not being compensated by the VA or anybody else for the illnesses that they developed over in Vietnam, which is tragic. I mean, they went over there to help us out to do the USO shows, and we're not going to do anything for them. And that's tragic.
Right. I would like to talk about, if I may, where you was one of the organizers of many, but you were one of the best, I got to be honest with you, for the Vietnam War coming to Revere. There was a young kid there that I looked on the wall. I forgot his name. Was only 14 years old that got killed. Does that ring a bell to you?
Not the name, no, but I know there was at least a few 16-year-olds. I don't know if you say he was 14.
No, there was one. There were a few
Yeah.
16s, but the youngest one was 14. Believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, back then, I mean, it was easy enough to forge your
Right.
your birth certificate or whatever and get in the service. But you know, doing the healing wall in Reveal, I thought it was 2 years ago, but you're telling me it was a year ago.
It was just last June.
Yeah. That's about the fourth or fifth one that I've done. I've done a couple in Everett and a couple in Lynn, and then we did the healing wall here in Revere last June.
Right.
And what was special for me for that healing wall was, as I said, I graduated from Immaculate in 1962. In 1960, there was one of my classmates, he was a couple of years ahead of me, Alan O'Brien. And Alan O'Brien was on Hill 86, and he was there for one day. He was with the 101st Airborne. and the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. It was a very stormy, rainy night, and the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese overran the Hill 86, and Allen died. And I believe he was the first one from Revere that was killed in Vietnam, and Allen was the only one from Immaculate that passed away over there. And the nice thing about seeing the Healing Wall come to Revere was I saw Allen's 5 sisters.
That's right, I remember you
His
mentioned
father
that.
had passed away, and Allen was going to be the man of the family and everything, and he ended up going in the service as a first lieutenant, and he ended up dying. And it was nice to meet all his sisters. It was a great experience for me.
Right, Bruce. We have a gentleman, you was here on the show about a year ago with a Mr. Joe Byron from the Honor Flight.
Right.
And by the way, for the veterans out there that do not know what the Honor Flight is, it's people of the first group of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. If you've never been to Washington, and it's free, they take you down there, they fly you down there, they wheel you around, they feed you. It's like you're a king for a day, really, Bruce. Yeah. And if the people want to get onto the Honor Flight, watch Revere TV, because they put the scroll on there, the telephone number's on there. And Bruce, I'm sure you're going to be one of the first ones from the Vietnam that deserves to go down there, really.
That would be nice.
Now, I got to ask you, you were mistreated when you came home. No offense or buts. I remember they used to call you criminals and names, and not this gentleman, but I people like Jane Fonda and all the others, you know, I know Jane there. How did you feel when you see that? I mean, here you're giving up your life for your country, you come back to America, and you're being treated like you're the enemy. How did you feel about that?
To be honest with you, coming back to Boston and Revere, I didn't run into any of that.
Well, I was in New York, and I ran into a lot of it.
I know I go out to California for about a month, a couple of weeks in November and a couple of weeks in February, and I go to a veterans group out there and I talk to them. And out in California, they had a lot of problems with resistance when they came home and everything. I think I noticed more of that when I was over in Vietnam. I think Kent State was happening and things.
Right.
There was a lot of protests and everything. But, you know, when I came back, I did a lot of drinking down the Legion, and, you know, I wasn't worried about that kind of stuff. But I felt bad for my brothers that were still over there. When I got to Phan Rang in 1966, January of '66, the base had only been open for about 2 or 3 months. And they had set up tents. We had to sleep in eight-man tents, I think it was. And it was very primitive. I mean, you had to go to outhouses, and you know. And I'm on a blog on the web of a Phan Rang Air Base where I was at. And I saw a couple of pictures there of guys that were holding 20-foot pythons. And I typed in, I said, were those there in '66? I didn't see any, but if I did, I would have had a heart attack, you know. I mean, they were holding these pythons. I couldn't believe how big they were. But
I would like to ask you a question before, unless you have something
No, go
about
ahead.
the flags. Now,
Yeah.
now, people don't realize that if they have a flag that looks like this, Bruce,
Yeah.
tell them what the rules are accordingly if the flag is in bad conditions.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure about these flags, but I'm going to assume it's the same as if you have a 4x8 or a
Right.
bigger
Or
flag
five, yeah.
that you fly from the front of your house. I know in Winthrop we bring them to the Elks, and the Elks has a ceremony where they burn the flags.
That's usually Flag Day.
Yeah, you don't want to be just throwing them out in the trash. That's disrespectful for the guys that lost their lives over there and the veterans that served. So if you have an older flag that's deteriorated, I know my son works at Kelly's and he's out in Saugus now, and they fly a big flag at the Saugus store, and it was getting frayed and faded, and he brought it to me, and I brought it to the Elks in Winthrop, and they'll burn it on a ceremony they have.
Right.
There's
We
a little
have one,
ceremony
too.
they have.
In East Boston, yeah.
So it's just a show of respect for veterans and what we went through and the people we lost, our brothers that we lost. So
Right. So I would like to tell the people of Revere, if they have any flags that are frayed or shredded or torn, drop them off at the Revere Veterans Service at the American Legion building downstairs, and they'll burn them around Flag Day.
Yep.
And by the way, talking about flags, if I can just interject one thing. We went down to Bourne Cemetery, Veterans, last Veterans Day.
Down there.
Yeah. At one time, they wouldn't even allow you to put these flags on the grave, but a gentleman by the name of Mr. Paul Monty, whose son was a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient and got killed in Afghanistan. Because of him, he went to President Obama and begged him to let us put the flags on the graves, and they did.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
you do it too.
I went to a funeral down there last summer. It was the first time that I went down to Bourne, and it's beautiful down there. It's very nice, taken care of. It's a nice cemetery.
Yeah, you know how many flags he needs now? They take a guess. I mean, it's sad. 57,000 veterans are buried there.
I don't know if you're aware of the Wreaths Across America.
No, never.
Unbelievable. Wreaths across America. They do it in the fall, in November, and they bring truckloads of wreaths from Maine, and they put them down at Arlington Cemetery, and they also drop some off in Bourne, and they lay them out there for Christmas for the veterans on their graves.
Talking about Arlington Cemetery, when we went down with the honor flight, we saw the Vietnam Wall, the real one with all the names on there. There was a lady there, and one of the guards that works at the Arlington Cemetery was doing what they call, I guess, is rubbing.
Etching, yeah.
When you rub the name, is that correct?
Etching, yeah.
Etching or rubbing. She was crying, and she goes, I couldn't understand why, but then I realized her son was buried. Was buried in the cemetery, but was up there. You know who else is buried in the cemetery in Arlington? I never knew that. Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
He's buried there too.
There's some beautiful stones down there when you walk around.
Yep.
You know, I tell the story, when the Healing Wall came last year, I found out that a lot of Vietnam veterans who have passed away, and they have their, and they were cremated. And what they do is they bring the ashes down to the real wall down in Washington, and they leave it next to a name of one of their buddies that was in the same outfit. And you say, well, what are they going to do with those ashes after the day? Well, they take those ashes and they bury them in back of the wall so they can be close to their
relatives,
comrades. Yeah.
I got to tell you, we have a gentleman in Revere, Paul Bonfiglio, from the Bonfiglio Funeral Home. He organized also to collect the flags, and every veteran that gets buried that he knows gets buried with a flag that he himself donates on it. So, Paul, thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
Now, what would you like to see the veterans, the VA, do in the future for us? Because they want to cut our benefits. They want to take away our health care practically.
Well,
I don't mean completely, but reduce it.
Well, that's crazy.
I agree with you.
I mean, we go and serve, and you know, when somebody now it's all volunteer, you know, and when these young guys and girls, women, volunteer to go into the service, the best thing the government can do for them is take care of them. If they get limbs blown off or things happen to them and they get sick with diseases and everything, for crying out loud, take care of them.
Right, and you know, the saddest part that I saw is when I went up to Boston on Court Street near the school, a homeless veteran. In the wintertime, sitting near the grating and trying to keep warm and shivering.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let him into the house to the veteran next door because he was DRUNK.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the Vietnam War, a lot of Vietnam veterans came home, and as you know, a lot of them have PTSD. They have a lot of mental problems, and a lot of them get into drugs and alcohol, and they committed suicide and whatever. And what they have down in Washington, right near the Vietnam Wall, is what they call a memory plaque. And that memory plaque, if you die, for instance, if I die from CLL eventually, my family can fill out an application, and on Flag Day, they read off the names of the families for that past year that put in applications, and you can get your name read down at the memorial plaque.
I'd like to say one thing to you, Bruce, if I may. Well, you're so interested in Vietnam veterans and Agent Orange. If people want to contact you, could you tell them how to contact you if they wanted to?
If you need to get a hold of me, you can get me on my cell phone, 617-519-8393. Or you can email me at vva908publicaffairs@verizon.net.
Do me a favor, repeat that telephone number again, because I'll tell you why. A lot of people my age do not know how to work the email computer because we're dummies. You're looking at one.
Well, 617-519-8393. And if you can do email, I can be reached at vva908publicaffairs@verizon.net.
And if they do snail mail, is that what they call it?
Snail mail?
Yeah. In other words, postage, if they want to write to you.
Oh, you can get me at 115 Winthrop Street, Winthrop, Mass. 115 Winthrop Street, Winthrop, Mass. Bruce Dobson.
Right, Bruce. Now, we got about 3 minutes left, so why don't you take a couple of minutes, and you wrap it up, and I'll take 1 minute. That's all I need.
All right. The main thing that I'm here for is on May 17th of this year, we're going to have an Agent Orange Town Hall meeting. And what that comprises is we're going to have speakers that are going to describe what happened to their families with the diseases that they have. My guest speaker, John Miner, has complications from Agent Orange, and his children do too. And he's going to talk about that. And what we want to do is we want everybody that comes there to, if you have any problems with your family and diseases with the kids and grandkids or just yourself, we want you to talk about it. And we want to be a brotherhood and try and take care of each other. We'll have veteran service agents there that will be able to help with filing claims or ask any questions or have answers, hopefully, for any questions you have. And this is the type of function that we have no idea how many people are going to come. It could be 20, it could be 200, we don't know. So we're trying to get as much exposure as we can so we can get as much help as we can for the veterans. And my son was born with undescended testes, which is a presumptive, but he's okay. He ended up having a boy, so he's okay. But anyways, there's a lot of. Oh, the other big thing, if I got just a quick minute.
You got about a half a minute.
Half a minute. If you're a wife of a Vietnam veteran who's getting 100% disability, if they die after 10 years, there's money that you can receive from the VA. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you might not know about. Please come and we'll try and help you out.
Okay, Bruce, I want to thank you, first of all, for your service. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
God bless you, really, and get healthy and get well. And to all the people of Revere, God bless you. God bless our troops, but most of all, God bless our great country, the United States of America. Until the next time, thank you for listening.